Live, but unfortunately Zoom is being Zoom and for some reason is not allowing me to do that. So we are recording the event and I will be putting it on Facebook Live right after the recording is finished. So with that, I'm going to keep moving on. So we'd love to see your faces. Thank you so much for whoever has already showed us their beautiful face. I would love it if everybody can uncover their cameras so that this can feel a lot more like a real life event. So today we will begin with Dr. Zomlot speaking about the impending annexation plans of Area C of the West Bank and what we can do, followed by a question and answer session. We'll be accepting questions in both Arabic and English, but they must be submitted via the chat, and I'll be going through them in order that they are received. Based on previous attendance, not all of our audience speakers speak Arabic, and so for today's webinar, I have requested that Dr. Husam Zomlot speaks in English, and he can switch into Arabic during questions and answers. If anyone doesn't understand a specific concept, you can always put it in the chat, and we're more than happy to switch into Arabic for that momentarily. And now I want to formally introduce our wonderful guest, our honorable guest of the evening, a good friend of PAC that was definitely taken away from the US way too soon. We wish that we were able to enjoy his presence with us a lot more, and we were very excited to see what could have come from his presence in the US. Ambassador Dr. Husam Zomlot is the head of the Palestinian mission to the United Kingdom. Prior to his appointment to the UK, Dr. Zomlot served as the ambassador to the United States, head of the PLO General Delegation to the United States, and Strategic Affairs Advisor to the Palestinian President. Dr. Zomlot's previous official roles include serving as Ambassador at Large for the Palestinian Presidency and Director of Fatah Foreign Relations Commission. Dr. Zomlot holds a PhD in economics from the University of London, was a professor of strategy and public policy at Birzeit University, where he co-founded and chaired Birzeit School of Government, and held a number of teaching and research positions at Harvard University and University of London. His professional experiences include working as an economist at the United Nations and economic researcher with London School of Economics and the Palestine Policy Research Institute. Dr. Zomlot is married and has 3 children and currently lives in the UK. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our honorable guest of the evening. Dr. Zomlot, the floor is yours. You're muted.
Rania, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Rania, thank you very much. It warms my heart to be among you and with you, with all these friends. I am terribly sorry. Already, Diab warned me not to mention names, but I'm looking at Bassem, somebody I have missed a lot. I'm looking at many friends on the screen. I can't see everybody, but I see Dr. Shukri Khalaf and all the people from Atlanta. You cannot imagine my feeling now. It's a feeling of belonging to your family, and we've been away for a long time. I'm glad you corrected how many kids I have, because I had to correct my biography. The 3rd was added only during the coronavirus, only a couple of months ago. So yes, it's 3. His name is Jalil now, and I promise next time in the US he'll be joining me. Really, for a start, this is the most important conversation I'm going to be having as far as the current political situation. It is with our people, our family in the US, for reasons that you all know how important, how significant it is, the US scene right now vis-a-vis Palestine. I have been having so many webinars in the US by various institutions, think tanks, political groups, but it is from my heart, and I mean every word of it. This is the most crucial one, the engagement with our community, our people, our family. And I thank the Palestinian American Community Center for arranging this, for giving me this unique opportunity. I remember my first visit to the center, Rania, and upon leaving Clifton and Patterson, I was saying to myself, God, I might be one of the most powerful ambassadors in the US. Power comes from your own family, from your people. And I remember very well having a sense of inspiration, really. And I've seen that inspiration even being magnified over the corona pandemic and the crisis. I was watching every step of your center and of our community, and you cannot imagine what I felt when I was hearing live on CNN the governor of New Jersey acknowledging the center, acknowledging the contribution of the Palestinian community. And this is not just a community affair. It's not just a community matter. It's a national matter for us. It's a political matter for us. After all these years where the US was neglecting the beauty of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian community, it comes at the right moment, because strong communities shine in crises, and you did shine during that crisis. You did show the best there is in the Palestinian people, in our values and our system, in extending your hands to those in need, regardless of color and regardless of creed and what have you. So I am so delighted to be with you. Just to touch upon, to kickstart the discussion on the issue, Rania, you asked me to talk about, which is annexation. Let me first, if you allow me, to correct or add to your question that Israel wants to or plans to annex Area C of the West Bank. That is not the situation. The real situation is Israel intends to, plans to annex the entire West Bank from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean, to the sea. And all that Israel is talking about exporting to the world is just a management technique to help the world swallow what Israel has decided already. If you go back to the so-called ultimate deal, the Trump plan, you will see one of its main provisions is that Israel shall have overall security control from the Jordan River to the sea, to the Mediterranean. And what Israel feels right now is that it simply can swallow the entire West Bank and can liquidate the Palestinian issue. It's a matter of power relations. Israel, for the last so many years, particularly in the last 4 years since Trump winning, Israel has been feeling an excess of power, if I may use this term. It has the power relation has tilted so much in its side, be it for internal situations since the takeover in Gaza and the Palestinian division, be it regional situation and the so-called Arab Spring and the Arab revolutions and what followed in terms of big, serious, considerable countries, states like Syria, like Iraq and others have crumbled, collapsed, living in a very uncertain situations, or be it internationally, and the Trump influence on the international scene and the anti-multilateralism that has been leading. All that has really accumulated power. And for Israel to translate that power into interest and into policy, it had three options. Either it asks for a solution that advantages Israel, a solution that is to its interest, an imposed solution on us, or it uses that excess power towards managing the conflict rather than resolving it, something that Israel has been doing for all these decades. Or thirdly, it uses that power to actually liquidate the whole thing, redefine the whole thing, conflict. Israel is going for the third. It is not just a matter of annexation of a territory here or a territory there, of 30% of a spot here, adjunct to the 67 borders, a settlement block. It's an act of liquidation. And if you, and we're saying this, so we explain what we have been doing over the last couple of years. And this started not in Tel Aviv, it started in Washington. When I was with you, when I was your ambassador, it started there by the first decision the Trump administration took before Jerusalem was closing off the PLO office in Washington. That was the first act. And the first act, if you remember, that was in November 2018 and 2017. That act was an act of de-recognition of the Palestinian leadership and the Palestinian people's vote, because missions, embassies are there to represent a people, to represent collective entities, foreign governments and foreign countries. And then a barrage of steps, including shutting down the US Consul General in Jerusalem, which was there since 1844, serving as a key contact and address between the people of Palestine and the people of America, the government of Palestine and the government of America, shuttering it down and then relocating it into the US embassy to Israel. And guess what, Rania, what they call it now? They call it the Palestinian Affairs Unit. What does that tell you? It tells you that the plan is to redefine the whole conflict from a conflict on the rights, collective rights, the right of self-determination for a nation that is rooted and vivid and has its rights enshrined in international law, all that we have built and known for all these years, to a minority that is seeking to improve its livelihoods. So the issue of Palestine is now being redefined by Trump and via the annexation to dismantle all that we have built and know, and to turn it into an issue of jobs, better lives, improving our economic conditions. And if you go back to what Kushner said in Bahrain, you know exactly the bottom line in this. The bottom line in this, with the help of Trump, a real estate dealer, that this is a real estate deal. Somebody gets the property and somebody gets the cash. In this case, Israel gets the property. All the property, Rania, from the river to the sea. So we are not mistaken. This salami slicing approach, if I may use this term, by Israel, we will chop this part, that part. It's just to reduce any backlash, any consequences, is to really help, in a way, the rest of the world swallow this process in a less painful way, if you may. So having explained that, we are aware of this dynamic around us, and that's why our position has been absolutely bluntly clear. And please, once I finish my introductory remark, ask me all the questions you want. Why did you engage in Oslo if Israel already annexed Jerusalem? I will answer all these questions because there are key questions for us to think about and contemplate at this point in time. For us, the position is very clear. Should Israel announce annexation by its government, the announcement is for us enough to actually take serious positions. Because having such a wide range coalition from the far right, the settler movement, through to the Likud, all the way to Labor, the Israeli Labor, to agree on annexation, that is a clear sign, almost a consensus in Israel, a clear sign of liquidating the Palestinian issue, and a clear sign that Israel wants to dismantle all the previous agreements, all that we have agreed on, every single bit of it, every single investment with it. And it's a clear sign, not only in the political sense, but in the legal sense. And again, in the legal sense, what Israel do we recognize as a PLO? We recognize Israel in 1993 based on the mutual recognition on the 1967 borders. So if Israel annexes further territories inside the 67 borders, then legally speaking, we do have an issue, we do have a problem. And from that perspective, I want to explain that despite the decades of Israeli hostile policies, illegal practices, its colonial settlement expansion, its besiegement of millions of people, including our people in Gaza, its very hostile policies, war crimes in Jerusalem, particularly in East Jerusalem, its house demolishing, and etc. All the policies, despite all that, the principles remained intact. And the one breakthrough that we did in our long history of conflict was during Oslo, because Israel retrieved from its previous policies and agreed in the Declaration of Principles that Oslo was about implementing the United Nations Security Council resolutions, namely 242 and 338. Please go back to the Declaration of Principles and read these provisions. And in that accord, it was clear, which reversed Israel's annexation before of Jerusalem, that Israel will put Jerusalem as a final status issue. Once you agree to have Jerusalem as a final status issue, so you do absorb yourself and you do reverse your previous policy. Now, Israel is reversing the reverse. And Israel is going 180 degrees back to not only annexing Jerusalem, but annexing the entire West Bank. And that's why the decision by the Palestinian leadership was quick. It was on the day of announcement that we are absorbed of all agreements. I want to assure you that this isn't tactical. This isn't tactical. We realize that we are at the end of the road. This road is not the road of our rights. Our rights are not conditioned upon Israel or upon a political process. This is the end of the road of the so-called peace process, of the so-called negotiations, of the so-called political settlement process led by the US for the last 27 years. And we realize that announcement requires swift action, but we also realize that implementation would require even stronger action. We did announce that we are absolved of everything. Since then, there has not been any contact whatsoever. Also, since then, we have refused to receive our own money. And this is creating a lot of pain because, you know, this is our money and we have to pay salaries for our public employees, for our hospitals, for our education system, and what have you. Yet we are sustaining that pain because Israel conditioned for the first time. By the way, always Israel sends this money to a bank account in Palestine automatically. This time Israel asked that we coordinate, that we meet. So it wants to blackmail us to get our own money and to bring us back to, or to walk back our decision to absolve ourselves of all agreements and to stop working under the Oslo and under the Paris Protocol and what have you. And that's why the Palestinian government refused to cooperate in that regard. And that's why our money remains to be ransacked, stolen in Israeli bank accounts. Now, having explained that, the next point that we should focus on, because I want more time, Rania, to the discussion, is can this be stopped? Can we stop Israeli annexation, or is it fait accompli? I think it can be stopped. It's primarily a matter of calculation for Netanyahu. It's a Netanyahu event. It's a Netanyahu act. And the calculus in Tel Aviv, the calculations now for Netanyahu, it's a win in the personal sense because, you know, it has helped him being re-elected. This is the main card that brought him back to power. It has helped him dodge criminal charges, but also there is a win in the political sense because, you know, he wants us and the rest of the world to focus on the issue of annexation. Don't annex the whole territory, stop annexing. And it's already a diversion from the overall discussion because it's not just annexation that we want to stop. It's the occupation that we want to end. It's the whole thing. And Israel has been annexing since its inception. I mean, Israel has annexed territory inside the 48 land. If we consider the partition plan to be the only UN document for the creation of Israel, it has allotted much less land than what Israel occupied in 1948. So, and since 1948, Israel has been annexing land adjunct to the Green Line, etc. And therefore, the point here is that for Netanyahu, he wants all of a sudden this whole diversion. And the when, in the political sense, should he go ahead with annexation? And the when should he not go ahead with annexation? Because then Israel has been really such a wonderful actor and it has heeded the international community. And now it's not annexing, which is a war crime anyway. Thirdly, it's a win for him strategically because Netanyahu has been in the political system to murder the idea of two-state solution and to preempt any possibility for a Palestinian state. Now, how do we change this calculus? That's the most important side. And can we change this calculus? And I believe we can. I really do believe we can. Netanyahu is dreaming if he thinks he can simply liquidate the Palestinian issue. He can't. It's an impossibility. And I'm not saying this rhetorically. It's an impossibility. Once a journalist asked me a few weeks ago here in the UK, he said, what if Israel does to you what they did in 1948? They just send you all in buses and transfer you out of your homes as happened already 72 years ago. I said, nothing will happen. We will just become a diaspora agency. We will become a liberation movement from outside. And let me remind you, we were up until 1993. So you have 13 million Palestinians. Every one of them is absolutely firm on our identity and on our orientation. So if Netanyahu thinks that we will evaporate all of a sudden, that's a mistake. But we need to calculate our steps nationally inside Palestine, regionally in the Arab world and the region, and globally. And we need to focus on that Israel is not only putting us on a test, it is putting the international system, the international order. I mean, the premise of the international law the rules-based international order that was established after the Second World War, the premise of that is the inadmissibility of acquiring land by force. I repeat it, the inadmissibility of acquiring land by force. And therefore, we need to leverage this moment that Israel is in odds with the very system that actually has managed to keep the world a safer place for the last 70 years or so. There's so much to be done, but I want to end with the US, because if there is one country that has affected us negatively over the years, it's the United States. Not only during Trump, by the way, but long before Trump. The US has not really been supportive of its own policies vis-a-vis us. Israel has remained to be a domestic issue in the United States. The US was trying to play the role of the mediator, but unfortunately, it could not bring itself to a neutral, fair mediator. It has always favored Israel, and this is publicly known. We don't need to go through it. You know it better than I do. But because the US maybe has affected us negatively, no other country can actually help stop annexation and help refocus more than the United States. We follow many discussions, positions, statements in the Congress, in the Democratic Party, even in the Jewish community. We follow a lot of activities in the United States as we speak. We see what is happening with Black Lives Matter. We see the activities of the Palestinian community, to the intersectionality and your contribution to the fabric of the US. And we believe that there is hope there. However, this hope needs to be translated with any possibility in November into political action and political agendas. And so far, I was the first Palestinian official to actually criticize Vice President Biden, that so far we haven't heard, and it was published in international media, we haven't heard anything that would actually dissuade Netanyahu from going ahead with the annexation. We heard the opposite, but he did not attach that opposition to any consequences, to any change of relations with Israel whatsoever. And Israel is accustomed to hearing these statements, and it will not change its calculus. I end by saying that when we watch the Palestinian community and its growth, both in number and in influence, when we follow what you have been doing at the communal level, at the civil level, at the political level, and I mean it. And before I left, I think it was Bassem who I had that conversation with. We don't need, hopefully the office will come back, but we have 500,000 offices and we have 500,000 flags, and we see the coming of our community in the US. And I tell you, the battle is about to begin, and our connection to all the movements around, and Israel's connection to the far right, fascist, racist movements everywhere is going to, in the end, put us in the right course of history. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very informative talk. I definitely think there's a lot that we need to do, and a lot of different aspects that we need to consider and think about and see what we can do on the ground to really affect change. So I want to ask all of our audience members to please put in your questions in the chat box. I've already received 3 and I'm waiting to hear more. I'm going to start with my first question, because this is a question that I've been wondering. So you were saying that, with this happening, this final threat of annexation, can everyone please share their mics are muted? That this final threat of annexation is kind of what ended the peace process road. So my question is, do you think that that was something that was delayed? And if it had not been delayed, could things have been different today? And what could have changed essentially about this peace process road earlier that could have potentially changed things today? And what are lessons learned about waiting, I guess, maybe too long for that we can take into the future?
Yeah, there must be so many lessons learned because, peace is not just about, details here and there. It's about the principles. And what was signed by successive Israeli governments is very clear. The principle of ending Israel's occupation, of establishing a sovereign, independent Palestinian state on the 1967 borders. East Jerusalem is its capital. The principle of resolving the issue of refugees in accordance with international resolutions. And that's why we listed in these agreements all the core issues, the final status issues that must be discussed between the two sides to achieve a final agreement. I was looking at some Israeli official justification, explanation of the annexation, saying that this has been all along an Israeli policy since Ben Gurion, the establishment of Israel, all the way to today. So, Rania, the question is, either Israel was disingenuous then when it signed the accords and when it agreed that the principle is 2 states on the 67 borders, or Israel is disingenuous now. I think Israel was disingenuous then, and I think Israel is disingenuous now. This is really the bottom line. That's number one. Number two, yes, we have engaged, maybe for too long. Maybe it took us much longer than it should have. Maybe we are the longest negotiating nation on earth. I mean, 27 years is gone. But we are also principled, Rania. We are principled. We have international allies and partners, and we have commitments. And believe you me, we have alliances with the liberal movements, with those who believe in justice and social justice. And you see even the linkage now between us and all the movements happening in the U.S. And we cannot zigzag. So in the 70s and the 80s, the world came to us and they said, you Palestinians have to abandon Palestine from the river to the sea. And you must, and by the way, now Netanyahu is telling the world he wants Israel to be from the river to the sea. You see the irony. And the world, and the entire world, including the US, was telling us, should you accept international legitimacy? Should you align yourself with international law? Should you become part of the League of Nations? Should you accept our resolutions? We will deliver. That was the deal. And therefore, it's important to stress the point and clarify it 100 million times. We did not demand the two-state solution. The two-state solution was never a Palestinian demand. The two-state solution was a Palestinian concession to actually ally ourselves with international law. Now that we have accepted, short after our a declaration of a state on the 1967 borders in 1988. Remember Yasser Arafat in that very important moment of declaring our state. The world came together, started the Madrid peace process, and then Oslo came, and it was about the principle of the two-state solution. All these years, Israel has ransacked, has walked back, has violated every single provision. But it did not commit itself legally to dismantling the principle. Now it is. And Oslo has really enabled us, because Israel said, okay, hang on, all of what I did before Oslo, I'm going to consider it null and void. So Jerusalem is on the table, everything is on the table. Now Israel is saying to us and to the world that your plan and your resolution and all the principles we agreed on are no longer valid. Then this is a new chapter. This doesn't mean the end of our cause. To the contrary, it will be a beginning, and a beginning for something exciting. And we will have so many venues and so many energies, but we must realize that the path we started in 1993 has come to an end.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. So we were receiving a lot of different questions. The first question we received from Lemia, who asks, while Israel is threatening to formally annex more Palestinian land, in reality, annexation measures continue to be taken on the ground every single day, which you had mentioned earlier in your talk. What do you think we can do about these measures, and how can we convince policymakers to hold Israel accountable?
Well, I want to be transparent. I'm speaking to my family and to, my friends. So, I wish things were more about legality and morality. Legality and morality is very important, and we must clinch into it. It must be a sacred cow for us, because this is our most important capital. And we must continue aligning ourselves with international legality. That's important. And that's why we are now reverting to international legal mechanisms like the International Criminal Court. Israel is absolutely obsessed about it. It's using Pompeo, the US Secretary of State. It's using Trump to blackmail the ICC judges, to threaten them, as you may have been following the last 2 weeks, which only tells you how much Israel considers this to be a threat, and we will go all the way. So we need to keep that, however. And we need to keep our popular resistance on the ground, as happened today in Jericho, this huge rally, massive rally with very important international participation. We need that to become a regular mass movement. But here's the key, this is also about power outside. And I must say that the key element is our Palestinian communities outside. It is the absolute key element. Politicians in the US, and I met so many of them. I spent the year and a half, most of it in the Congress. I must have met maybe half of the number of Congress people, senators, and representatives. And in every single meeting, I came out with one most important conclusion. The conclusion is, what do you have to give? Before you ask, what do you have to give in terms of the power, in terms of making sure that supporting Palestine is not a political suicide and it's actually a political reward? This is already happening with the help of so many constituencies in the US, with the help of the younger generations in the US, with the help of the various communities, the Black Lives Matter, with the help of the progressive voices in the Democratic Party, Sanders and what have you, with the help of even progressive voices in the Jewish community, but also with the majority of our community. The key thing, I want to answer your question, because our people back home are so clever, really. I was raised in the first Intifada, young man, and I saw the genius, the most powerful engagement with an occupier and an oppressor. And our people will choose the moment and will choose their venues and will choose their strategies. I'm not worried. But to help them outside, we need a muscle. We need a major muscle. And I believe the biggest army we have is our communities outside, especially in the United States. I have asked my colleagues many times about the exact number, but we know it's in the hundreds of thousands. We were so proud of the of the Palestinian American Community Center and what it did during the coronavirus. We witnessed many organizations and your activities, but we need more. We need the politicians in Washington to know that there are consequences of wrong decisions vis-a-vis Palestine, and there are rewards of right positions. We need to move in that direction. And if Bassem remembers, and Diab and all our friends, that's why the Palestinian organizations came together in 2017 and 2018 to establish the Palestinian US Council, to try and really organize our efforts in the political sense. Because in the end, I asked once a very good friend of mine, how do you translate your political rights and compassion with your rights, solidarity to political decision making? And he said 3 words: organization, organization, organization. And I need to tell you, we need to organize. We are good people. I'm sorry, we are good people. Very rooted individually. We are the best. Look at us. Look at everyone around the screen. Look at the success. Stories of inspiration wherever you go for Palestinians. But collectively, we need to organize and we need to find the lowest common denominators between us. We need to unite. And once we create these institutions, once we make these politicians aware of our power, you will see the difference.
I absolutely agree. And you said my favorite word, organize. So I agree with you 100%. I think that there's definitely a lot of room that we can work to improve. Our next question is: ماذا بقي لدي كفلسطيني من أوراق فعالة أو مؤثرة ممكن استخدامها في هذه المرحلة؟
يعني لدينا 3 أوراق مهمة جدا. الورقة الأولى والأهم والحاسمة هي الشعب الفلسطيني. والله العظيم هذا مش كلام عاطفي، ولا بدي أحكي بالعربي ولا أرجع للإنجليزي رانيا؟
تقدر تحكي بالعربي and then نرجع للإنجليزي للأسئلة الإنجليزية.
ايوه، خلينا نكون براحتنا يعني، نحكي براحتنا يعني. فبالتالي شعب يعني غريب بكل صفاته، يعني غريب من ناحيه صموده وقوته وعنفوانه وجذوره. ما في شعب قدر يتحمل كل هذه المؤامرات ل 103 سنه. 103 سنه بدت في بريطانيا، هنا في البلد اللي انا الان سفير فيها، في 1917 وعد بالفور المشؤوم. هذا التقصد للشعب الفلسطيني بنفي حقوقنا، وانتقلت لفرنسا اللي سلمت إسرائيل القنبلة النووية، والآن هي في واشنطن وأمريكا حماية هذا المشروع الاستعماري، مشروع الهيمنة في المنطقة. كل اللي حصل هو كان مفترض يكون قطار، يعني قطار يجي جارف يخبط الشعب الفلسطيني ونخلص، نتحول من كتب الجغرافيا إلى كتب التاريخ، يعني نصير فقط في المتاحف. خلصنا كشعب، انتهينا. شو اللي انتم شايفين 103 سنه زهقناهم وراح نزهقهم ل1000 سنه. يعني شعب ما فيش معه حل، ولن يكون معه حل الا حقوقه. وصدقوني هاي البضاعه السياسيه اللي بحكيها، هذه باور ريليشنز، هذه قوه، هاي القوه الاساسيه. ومش بس بالداخل، مش بس على ارض الوطن، كمان انتم في كل مكان. يعني انا في فتره كورونا قاعد انا في يعني اول الفتره بطمن على اعضاء الجاليه يعني الفلسطينيه في بريطانيا، بتصل على جهات مختلفه، يعني بصراحه ملهم اللي سمعته واللي تبعته. يعني 550 طبيب كانوا بيتقدموا المعركه في بريطانيا، فلسطيني، الاساتذه الجامعه في كل مكان. يعني هذا شعب حول النكبه الى فرصه، حول كل اللي صار فينا مش لمدعاه للشكوى بس، بل مدعاه للاستثمار في نفسه. هذا اول شيء، الشعب الفلسطيني، ومش خايفين منه. يعني ما ضلش غزاة دخلوا علينا عبر التاريخ لا روحناهم، وبالتالي طولوا معنا هدول بس لروحهم. الشغله الثانيه التمثيل المركزي والموحد للشعب الفلسطيني. في شعوب اندثرت يا رانيا، وللي سال السؤال اخي الكريم، لانه ما عندهاش تمثيل مركزي. التمثيل المركزي غاية في الأهمية، ويعني ببعض من ملاحظات نفهمها هون ونفهمها هناك، ولكن منظمة التحرير الفلسطينية تمكنت في كل هذه السنوات والعقود من تمثيل الشعب الفلسطيني والتعبير مركزيا جمعيا عن قرارنا وإرادتنا السياسية. وبدي أقول لكم اوعوا تخطئوا ليش سكروا مكتب منظمة التحرير في واشنطن، بس أهم شيء لا يريد من يريد تصفية القضية تمثيل مركزي فلسطيني. بدوش مظلة تجمع الشعب الفلسطيني، بس هذه المظلة موجودة وراح ندافع عليها بدمنا. بدها إصلاح، بدها ديمقراطية، بنتناقش، وهذا كلام منطقي وشرعي وكل فلسطيني له الحق في ذلك. ولكن هذه المظلة ستبقى فوق رؤوسنا غصبا عن ترامب وغصبا عن نتنياهو، وهذه قوة أساسية. ثالثا، لا، نحن الآن في تحالف مع كل شيء خير في العالم. احنا في تحالف مع القانون الدولي، احنا لدينا حملات مناصرة في كل مكان في هذا العالم. نحن حقيقة نرى من الأجيال الجديدة واللي سبقتها، بس الأجيال الجديدة تحديدا، على أن قضية حق. أنا أقصد الثالث هي المناصرة الدولية. هذه العوامل الثلاثة. طبعا أنا بديش أجي على الإقليم، يعني أنا بديش أجي على المنطقة العربية، النقاش طويل فيها، ولكن أنا بقول لكم نتنياهو يضخم في قصة التطبيع، يضخم كثير. يعني المنطقة العربية تربطنا بيننا وبينها علاقات أبعد من السياسة، والقضية بالنسبة لنا ولهم هي قضية رابط الدم والتاريخ والحضارة والدين واللغة. يعني أنا مش قلقان على شعوب المنطقة، أنا قلقان على الوضع الاستراتيجي في المنطقة. ولكن هذه العوامل، راني أنا طولت في الجواب على هذا السؤال، لن يكون معها إلا حل عادل. إسرائيل اليوم مرتاحة وشاعرة بدهاش تعمل هذا الحل، إذا نرحل الحل للمستقبل، بس بشرط واحد: أن لا نقبل لأحد أن يؤثر أو يعيد تعريف حقوقنا. نحن لسنا هنا لتحسين المعيشة تحت الاحتلال، نحن هنا من أجل إنهاء هذا الاحتلال وإقامة دولة. والله ما قدرناش وفائض القوة تبعنا بيسمح لناش، على راسي بيسمح لناش، بس بنسلمك أنت رانيا، بنسلمك نضيف.
شكرا كتير. Thank you so much. Our next question is from Wali, who asks, if on July 1st, Netanyahu goes ahead and annexes his settlements in the Jordan Valley area, what would be the Palestinian Authority response? And building on that, since the two-state solution is not possible anymore, do you support one-state solution with equal rights for all?
سؤال مهم وصعب في نفس الوقت. If the question was in English?
Yes, it was in English.
If annexation goes ahead by the 1st of July or any time, and if this annexation is 1 centimeter or the entire West Bank, we make no difference. And I want to explain this or stress this again and again. There is no difference, because we are not talking about the practice. We are talking about the principle. Are we talking about backrolling occupation or deepening occupation? So it doesn't make a difference. And no matter how Israel would want to manage this and brand this, you will hear many things. This is not annexation. Israeli officials now are telling the world this is expanding Israeli legal system. It's not. It is only taking areas where we will swab in the future. شو اللي swab هاي؟ مين اللي told you who we're gonna swab these areas? كذاب أنت كذاب. You're lying. We are not going to swab anything. It's gonna be a decision, a willful decision by the people of Palestine and their leadership. It's not you who decide what area is gonna be swabbed. This is not negotiation. This is diktats, and we don't accept it. And they will be using many techniques, all tactical. The bottom line is the principle. And if they go ahead with the principle, I think the decision has been foretold. We stopped everything. We absolved ourselves of everything in preparation. The Palestinian Authority was established not as a gift from Israel or anybody else for that matter. The Palestinian National Authority is made of our own sons and daughters. It was the PLO that established it, and it's because of the long struggle of our people. It came as a result of the steadfastness of the struggle for decades. So nobody tell us that the Palestinian Authority is something that is linked to Israel. However, the Palestinian Authority was established to take us from occupation to liberation, from occupation to independence. That's the key principle function of the Palestinian National Authority. It was established to take us from occupation to independence. Israel wants the Palestinian Authority now to serve the Palestinian people, to provide services, to improve livelihoods under occupation. That is not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And if the choice is between our service to our people and between our national rights, I assure you, we choose the second. We do not confuse between tools, tools and objectives. Our objective, our goal is very clear. We are very clear. Our goal is to end Israel's occupation. If the Palestinian Authority contradicts with this, it will go. So by the 1st of July, if Israel does this, we will have to turn the clock back to the 12th of September, 1993. We will go back when Israel was in full responsibility of all the Palestinian people under its military control. And we as a people and we as leadership are capable to take a new path. This links me to the second question, the one state and two state solution. Sorry, Rania, what's the name of the brother who asked, or the sister?
Wali.
Well, Walid. Walid, Rania already told me she will post this on the Facebook, so I know I'm public. I don't mind a one-state solution. I don't mind an egalitarian democratic state from the river to the sea. I don't mind a state that provides for all of its citizens. I don't mind, me personally and my family, the three kids and my wife go and live in Haifa. I like Haifa is my favorite Palestinian city. Or whatever Israel said. For me, this is my narrative. And, I would love a one-state solution. And I would like to see a constitution and the rule of law and political institutions that really, really respect every citizen equally, not based on our color or height or creed or all that, but based on our citizenry. And I don't mind it, but not with current Israel. I would want a decolonized one state, and I don't think we are close enough for that. Decolonized one state is going to take a long time. Didn't you see what they are doing to our brothers and sisters in 48? The citizens, the Israeli citizens, the Palestinian citizens of Israel? Didn't you follow a year and a half ago the so-called nation-state law that specifically, this is the first time in the history to legalize that the right of self-determination is only exclusive to one religion within a state. It's unheard of. It's specifically to tell our people inside, the Palestinian people inside Israel, that you have no rights. You have no collective rights. You will always be second-class citizens. So I don't think that commute now from Ramallah to Haifa is possible, Ya Walid, just to be practical. And therefore, I think for the time being, the idea of establishing a Palestinian state, statehood, I'll tell you, I'm an ambassador now in the UK. Nothing pained me in the last few months, last few weeks, more than the fact that I could not send back our kids, our students to their families. They're stuck, they're stuck because of the corona pandemic, and they want to go back. I mean, this is not even a right that you should ask for. It's an automatic right. Being able to go back to your homes and families, being reunited. I am the only ambassador on earth that could not do this. The only, because I am the only ambassador that has no airport, no airlines, national airlines. Issues of state is very important to protect our people, to provide for our people. I don't trust the current Israeli dynamics, and for us to decolonize it, it's going to take ages. And I pain to forego the idea of Palestinian self-determination, because it's the glue that connects all of us. We are a nation, غصب عنهم. We are a vivid nation, and nations have the absolute birthright to establish their independence. This is not questioned. And therefore, I am much more into abandoning that we can get a state via talking to Israel. I think, the previous generation has a lot to tell us about their experience. They tried. I am not convinced we can get a state via negotiations now, not whatsoever. But I think we can get a state via our own action, imposing a state on the ground. We must expand, not Israel, on our land. We must engage the status quo. We must empower and inspire our people to actually clinch our state out of their jaws. And this is possible, more possible in the meantime. Should we establish a state via imposition, be it inside, يعني غصب عنهم, against their will, or be it from outside the work, the sanctions, the anti-apartheid movement like South Africa, recognition of the state of Palestine, legal structures like the ICC, all that come together for us to take our state. I think it's more possible than a decolonized one-state reality. But should we get our state on the 1967 borders, that doesn't exclude the possibility of moving forward in a different arrangement in the future to have no borders and actually to have an arrangement whereby people can travel and can move and can work wherever they want.
Thank you. So we received 2 more questions that are related to neighboring countries, so I'm going to combine them. So Anam asked, what is the position and stand of neighboring Middle Eastern countries? Is there, if any, a firm position? What about the role of Turkey in the region? And then Bassem asks, does the Sultan have commitments from any meaningful countries to sanction Israel if they go ahead with the annexation?
Yeah, the region, the Middle East, is really in turmoil, and Israel knows this, and that's why Israel is fast in trying to, cash this excess of power. It's feeling, it's enjoying, primarily also because of what is happening in the region, as we said before. Are we getting a clear position by the region? Yes, we are, including the Arab world, including Turkey, including all the major powers in the region. But that position required more action in their part, and we need more. We need more. We need clarity, and we are saying this very clearly. I mean, this is not the time for unexplained normalization. Really, this is what are you taking in exchange more than more hegemony by Israel? This free normalization is absolutely against the interest of us and the region. We also need to see more action in the Arab world to put not only sanctions on Israel, but sanctions on any state in the international system that really thinks it's very easy and profitable to actually just simply be hostile to the Palestinian rights. And there are so many small states keep voting against us in the UN system, keep blocking a European Union consensus. And I don't want to mention states by name because it's more about political changes in governments than the people of these states. But we also need the Arab world to provide for us a safety net, a political safety net, a legal safety net, a financial safety net. They're seeing right hand, in front of their eyes, the Israeli blackmail, financial blackmail, the Trump administration financial blackmail. And I think, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And our brothers in the region and our sisters can actually help us more than what they're doing. Any other country thinking of sanctions, the whole world now realize that the time of having Israel above the law and enjoying this everlasting impunity has come to an end. The problem is the world is hesitating because of the particularity of Israel. I mean the West here, primarily the West. And there is a lot of sensitivities. I don't want to go through it when it comes to Israel and the history and what have you. And can we impose sanctions given what happened in the Second World War and all that? And I know because I discussed this with many officials here, politicians here in Europe and elsewhere, they realize that this is a moment of truth. It's the moment of truth for them. Because if they fail this test, this isn't going to be only about Palestine. It is going to go much beyond Palestine. It will become a matter of who's next. There will be 100 Netanyahus who will want to do the same, to pocket this for personal gains and political gains. And it would really be the beginning of the end of the international system. So there are so many countries that are seriously thinking about sanctions. I think all Western countries, minus America now, are thinking about what kind of sanctions they can do. All of them are thinking about recognizing the state of Palestine, here primarily Europe. All of them realize that short of concrete, tangible actions, nothing will be stopped. But the question, will they do it or not? I really don't know. I don't know. And I don't want to attempt to give you a definite answer. I think some countries might be able to do, and some countries would lag behind.
Thank you very much. And I think that's, we need that. We need more people in our support to impose these sanctions. So it is 6 o'clock, and I want to be mindful of the time. We are going to be going on for another half hour because we received so many wonderful questions, and we're going to be going through it. And Dr. Husam Zomlot has been generous with his time and has agreed to stay till 6:30 so that we can get through all of our questions. So with that, the next question is really important. It talks about media coverage. So I want to ask you, Dr. Husam, Rafat asks, and I agree with him, what can we do to create more pressure on this specific topic of the annexation, and what can we do to make it worldwide news that can get as much media coverage as possible?
Yes, this is a very important question, and if we have suffered from any specific thing, it's the media coverage of our cause for the last 72 years. There is an issue of terminology. Whenever our cause is mentioned, they will tell you Palestinian gunmen, settlements. What do you mean settlements? Yeah, settlements appear positive, as pioneers coming and settling the land and linking to the U.S. experience. These are not settlements; these are colonies. And why do you always report Palestinians in a violent way, when in fact much of the violence is coming from the occupiers? There is an issue there. There is also an issue of distraction. I mean, usually the international media picks on the Palestinian issue when there is an acute situation, very acute. I mean, something is about to erupt or has erupted, then you have coverage, but you don't have a steady coverage in times when things are relatively stable. I have learned that this could be fixed. And I've learned through my own experience. I mean, media is very lazy. It needs
I apologize. I muted the person.
Media is very lazy, and it needs, again, organizations. When you see a lot of coverage and op-eds on Israel, it's not individuals who do this, it's organizations. And frankly, I'm also following the brilliant work of the IMEU in the US, and we need more of those, and we need more of these institutions in Europe here. Organizations that will write to these editors, will write to the board of editors, will make sure that the issue is covered, will provide the background for the stories, will nudge all the time the journalists. And I remember I said media is lazy. They're lazy. If you give them substance and information and statistics and you prepare the ground, they will run with it. Lastly, individually, each one of you has a responsibility. I mean, when I was in the US, I remember, one of the key focus I had was media. And the first week I went to visit CNN and then the editorial board of Washington Post, New York Times, to establish personal relationships with them. And that helped, that really helped. And it was very important that we are also in the coverage, on the screen, in the printed media, etc. But I learned that every time I went and appeared in one of these main shows and what have you, hundreds of letters would be sent by the extreme elements in the other side, and they would be complaining, "Why did you bring him? He's a terrorist." Blah, 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 blah. This, activism by individuals would really affect these media. They would not think, or they would think twice after that. I think in our case, it's much easier to actually write to these media outlets because we have the right to our side. And some of these Israeli speakers are simply lying. They spread poison and venom every time they come out. So also more activism by us as Palestinian community to media will absolutely help.
I absolutely agree. And I also commend organizations like the IMEU. I think they're doing a lot of great work in changing the narrative. David asks, and I think you touched on this a little bit before, what is the decision point or action that will change our Palestinian strategic approach from a two-state solution to a one-state solution, similar to the South African model?
What will it take to change the approach?
Yeah.
It will take the Palestinian people. In the end, whatever the Palestinian people decide, we, for instance, as diplomats outside, we don't say what we think is right or wrong. It's not our personal views that we come out and say, "Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me, Rania?"
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, we here representing the people of Palestine, and the people of Palestine are represented by elected leaders, and that's why elections was meant to happen last year, and I hope it will happen after this Corona pandemic. It's very important to renew our democratic process, and then we receive our instructions from the people via their elected representatives. The people of Palestine, you have to tell us what course of action, which agenda should we protect and which agenda should we advance. We don't just wake up and say, okay, it's the one state. The people of Palestine, via their elected political representatives, parties, all across, still remain to be around the idea of ending occupation, establishing a state, respecting the right of refugees, the right of return. Why is that? Because until now, the people in Palestine realized that short of gaining our independence and statehood, we would be up in the air. They still realize that this is a major step to be achieved for it to open up other arenas. So the answer to your question, when this will happen, it will only happen when the people will elect leaders, and leaders will decide that Husam Zomlot in London or anywhere else must abandon the two-state solution and endorse the one-state solution. So far, that includes all the factions in the PLO, Fatah, PFLP, the Democratic Front, and it includes, by the way, Hamas and other parties outside the PLO. So far, still the platform is ending occupation. It's not two states. It's ending occupation, establishing a state of Palestine on the 1967 borders with East Jerusalem, its capital. Nations find it very difficult to leap and to jump from time to time. And it will be very hurtful for us to actually have and allow Israel to deal with us individually rather than collectively. And it might be very dangerous. We have to think about this thoroughly. I already admitted to you that I don't mind the one state. Actually, I think it's the most noble, and it's the most egalitarian, it's the most just, the fairest, if I can use that term. The most fair outcome is that the historic land of Palestine is going to be a state where everybody can live in equality and in justice and in peace. However, what about our sense of nationhood? What will happen to that? What about our pride and our collective pride together as a nation? What if we call for a one state? What will happen to the settlement? The moment we call for one state solution, almost we will legitimize settlement. Why should we abandon the international law when we have paid 78% in advance of our land, to actually ally ourselves with international legality? Why should we give Netanyahu an easy ride now and zigzag? So there are so many questions, Ra'fat, and I'm sorry to go on, that we need to thoroughly think about. But I assure you, the moment you, Ra'fat, and the Palestinian people decide a change of course, you will see us defending it and fighting for it.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Paulina. She asks an interesting question. Do you think that former candidates such as Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders could have successfully pressured Israel to drop their annexation plans?
Well, out of what we have followed during the campaign, definitely Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Sanders, Bernie Sanders, both are friends, and I had the honor and the privilege of meeting them several times in Washington. Had really presented a platform that was progressive and was really more about the US being a global force and being allied with international legality and international legitimacy, and more about the US projecting itself as a fair party. However, I think the issue in the US is not just the one person on the top. It's not just the president. The issue in the US is much more deep. It's about the establishment. There is, of course, the strategic side of the US establishment that still looks at Israel and sees Israel as a strategic value. It does a strategic function. And that's why we need to also create our own strategic function. And also we need to redefine the strategic function of Israel as a watchdog primarily. And we as Palestinians need to also assess the whole scene, not only the one president on the top.
Absolutely agree. So Amin asks a very interesting question, and I think it's very relevant to how it's happening around the world today. With the ever-increasing hardships facing our people, the COVID-19 pandemic, economic hardship, and the impending annexation, national unity is critical now more than ever. Has there been any recent practical steps towards genuine reconciliation?
I think and I'm sorry, Rania, I want to go back to the previous question and then I'll answer this question, because there is one most important point. Israel now has almost abandoned its alliance with the Jewish community in the US. They still have a minority in them, but the majority of the Jewish community already themselves feel abandoned, and no longer Israel is relying on their support. Israel now is allying itself and relying primarily on the support of the evangelical movement. You all know that. And by the way, there are so many voices that are saying, where is Israel going with this? I mean, you know what the evangelical movement believe. And that's why it's crucial that we understand the US and we understand the fabrics and we understand the establishment and we unpack all this. And, we are the original Christians as Palestinians. And, we have a narrative and we have a way. And by the way, there is a lot of engagement with the evangelical movement in the US. Just to tap that question and to conclude it, that it isn't about just Elizabeth Warren if she won the presidency. There is a workshop that needs to happen in the US that can only be done by the Palestinian community. Answering the national unity, I think you mean by the national unity, the Fatah Hamas and the Hamas takeover of Gaza, because as a people, I don't think we have ever been fragmented or disunited as a people. And in every turn of the corner, in every major situation, we come around each other and we are united. We are united in destination, we are united in our history and narrative and the way we teach our kids, we are united in our goals. National unity is a big term. I think the people are united. But if you mean the factions and the political factions, there has been, and I'm sorry to dwell more. I mean, I can give you simple examples. Did you remember Mohammed Assaf when he won the Arab Idol? The Palestinian people were celebrating his symbolic inside Palestine, inside 48, in Nasr, in America, in Chicago, in Lebanon, refugee camps, everywhere. So the people are absolutely, their identity and their sense of unity is unmatched and untouched. And it's important to keep repeating this because people think that our nation as a nation is disunited and fragmented. The problem is in the political parties, factions, there has been many attempts, many agreements that signed with Hamas. And I don't want to dwell on the fact that it has never been honored, respected by those who control Gaza. It hasn't. Now it's time to redefine what reconciliation means. And in my opinion, and I belong to this now personally, reconciliation or national unity must mean one main word, elections. Elections. The source of unity is the people. The source of legitimacy is the people. The source of national strategy is the people. And if we need unity, we will find it in the renewal of our democratic process. That is what will unite our system. Revert back to the people. Go back to the source of everything. Go back to the people. And let's not be stuck with the. I am Fatah, and I'm a member of the Fatah Revolutionary Council, elected member, and I am a proud Fatah member because I believe in the national campaign rather than any other campaign. But this isn't about Fatah and Hamas. This is about the people of Palestine. It's about their political system, and that's why last year there was a lot of pressure towards elections as the key platform to magnify the sense of unity among our nation, and also magnify the unity in the political system. Unfortunately, we were met with a major hurdle. Israel refused to guarantee elections in East Jerusalem. And for us, convening elections without Jerusalem is a suicide. For us, Jerusalem is the eye of the Palestinian cause. Jerusalem is all what it matters. Liberate Jerusalem and you have liberated Palestine. Liberate everything else without Jerusalem and you are under occupation and colonization. It is not just the political capital, it's our compass in every single sense. And that's why we couldn't because what? You go along with the Trump plan and the Trump recognition of Jerusalem and the moving of the embassy. Only a few months later, you convene elections without your people, the Jerusalemites, who have gone through the electronic gate intifada only a year and a half ago, and you've seen that moment, and then you tell them that you are not part of the Palestinian polity and political system. After the COVID-19, we must revisit this. We must talk to the world and engage the world to put sufficient pressure on Israel to allow elections in East Jerusalem. And in that, you have already the unity of the people, and in that, you will have the unity of the political system.
Thank you very much. The next question is from Ahmed Al-Khatib, who says, it's a pleasure to see Dr. Husam, and I want to tell him that we miss him in the US. His question is, why do Palestinian politicians and leaders, when they talk about the occupation, they only focus on 1967? Where is the land in 1948? He is a refugee and he feels that his right is lost.
Akhi Ahmed, I miss you too, and hopefully I'll see you soon, Habib. And I miss everybody. I wish I can see everybody on the screen, but the screen only gives me four screens. But I'm scrolling around to see you, Ahmed, but I can't. But nonetheless, let me explain this. The right of Palestinian refugees to go back to their homes is sacred and non-negotiable. This is not a right you negotiate, because it's not just a collective right, it's a private right before it is a collective right. I mean, how can a Palestinian official like myself negotiate your private property? I mean, if you, Ahmed, come and tell me I have a house, nobody can negotiate your right. You go to any court and you have the deeds, and any political deal is void and null. However, the Palestinian people, through their leadership, decided long before your time and my time, maybe we were children by then playing in the streets, they decided that they will accept the formula that as far as geography is concerned, a Palestinian state will be established on the territory that Israel occupied in 1967, once Israel ends its occupation, with East Jerusalem as its capital. As for demography, the PLO accepted that refugees have the right to go back to their homes inside the 48 areas. So it isn't a formula whereby your rights are undermined in any way or form, for that matter. But the leadership then, the late Yasser Arafat, Abu Ammar, Allah yarhamu, and his comrades, his brothers and sisters, his colleagues, have decided that maybe it's a moment when we should not think only about absolute justice. Because, Ahmed, I agree with you. Absolute justice means Palestine is ours. We have been there for thousands of years. But they went for relative justice. Relative justice. And in their heart, it was the other side. Because while Israel has committed the most heinous crimes against us, the Nakba, the ethnic cleansing, the transfer, the negation of our basic rights, the murder of our people, thousands upon thousands, and lately the last one was Iyad al-Hallaq, the autistic Palestinian, and you saw that murder. And I see that his photos now are being shown in Black Lives Matter demonstrations in the US, and the photos of George Floyd being shown in demonstration in the West Bank and Gaza, which links us. But all these crimes, in the end, the leadership realized that there is Israel and Israeli generations who become a de facto. They are there. And we need to deal with this de facto, and we need to deal with the fact that Israel there.
Thank you very much. We're getting a lot of comments on the chat. So just the last couple
Keep
of
on.
questions.
I am happy to stay until the morning. I am between and among the beloved.
We really appreciate it. It is 11. It's nearing 11:30. Dr. Husam Zomlot's time. So we do want to respect his time, even though we appreciate that he would stay as long as we would like him to stay. So the next question is from Jamal, where he asks, and you went over this, but I think it would be helpful to kind of maybe summarize specifically ways that we could help. In what ways can Palestinians in the diaspora support the Palestinian movement? And he also thanks you for an insightful conversation.
And I'm not poetic when I say you are already helping by being who you are, and by this isn't just about demonstrations and struggling on the ground. It's about identity. It's about maintaining our narrative. It's about Rania here that I see as a proud Palestinian, despite and after all that happened. It's about Jalil, my latest son, who was born only 3 months ago. And I named him Jalil because my favorite spot in Palestine is Jalil. Sure, whatever Israel says and whatever, Jalil for me, where I grew up as a small child, Bisakhnin, which is not 67 areas. Yani. Nobody can touch my narrative and my sentiments and my definition. The key point is, did any Palestinian forget? And I think not one of the 13 million Palestinians, including you, have forgotten. Did any Palestinian change our narrative? Not one. Did any Palestinian stop teaching their kids about Palestine and about our great traditions? Not one of them. And I tell you, this might sound so simple. No, it's not simple. It isn't. The whole fight is about, when I was in the US, the biggest struggle I had was our curriculum. In the Congress, every day the Israeli lobby will complain about our curriculum, in the schools. And they want me as an ambassador to go back and to report that we have to change our curriculum. Why? Why? Because Israel now feels so comfortable in the political arena, in the international arena, thanks to Trump, in the regional arena, because of all what we described. It feels it has won in the military arena. The one thing it wants to engage and change is the narrative, is the history. It wants to rewrite history. So number one, please keep the history, keep the narrative, raise your kids, speak our nice dialect and accent, يعني الفلاحي كمان, stay in the فلاحي side. And you cannot imagine how important is this. This is number one. Number two, please, sending money back home is important, especially now, but this is not the most important. Because, I understand that the Palestinian people have been subjected to the most horrific situation, and therefore there is a human need. In Gaza, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, in refugee camps, there is a dire need. But we are not a poor nation. Our situation is not because of us being lacking resources. We are one of the most successful, most educated nations on earth. We have, by the way, one of the highest PhD per capita graduates worldwide. Our issue is political. It's the negation of our rights. It's the oppression of an oppressor. There is this regime of oppression, and therefore I invite you, as your friend, to spend much of your energy and resources in the United States. Please spend your energy in changing the course of history in this country, the US. The US is contributing directly to our agony, and it has enabled Israel throughout the years. So spend your money, your time, your energy in creating resources, institutions, human capital, to engage the political arena in the US, to engage the media in the US, to engage the civil society in the US, to partner with the intersectionality and the various groups in the US, to build a bottom-up. This is a moment when we really go bottom-up when we build our alliances. And throughout my time in the US, before I became an ambassador, when I was at Harvard in Boston, and before that, and when I was in Washington as your representative, I have learned that we have all what it takes. Growing generations, younger generations realize the Palestinian cause, the righteousness of the cause, the power of the cause, but we are not able to seize the moment because sometimes we invest more in charity than we invest in building our muscles, so we regain our rights and we become prosperous. We will become prosperous on the day of our salvation and liberation because we have all what it takes to be prosperous. But so long as we don't invest in the right place, we will continue needing money until we actually build the muscles to knock down this oppression.
So thank you very much. So we have 4 questions left and we have 4 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the 4 questions and then I'm going to leave the floor to you to wrap it all up. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we'll start off with Mohammed Samna, who asks, you mentioned canceling all agreements with Israel. Is that temporary until Israel stops the annexation plans? And why wasn't this action taking place when US first recognized Jerusalem as their capital, as Israel's capital? The second question is in Arabi. It says, Assalamu alaikum, كثير من الفلسطينيين, Arya says, كثير من الفلسطينيين يتساءلون هل ستصبح الضفة مثل غزة؟ لا أحد يستطيع أن يدخل أو يخرج بعد فك الارتباط لأننا نسمع على الأخبار أنه إسرائيل بعد فك الارتباط لن تعترف في جوازات السفر الفلسطينية أو حتى شهادات الميلاد أو الوفاة. Which is an important question. The third question is from Lu'ay, who he says, سؤالي هل فكرت السلطة في حالة الضم في موضوع الربح والخسارة وإذا حصل الضم ما هي الإجراءات التي سوف تتخذ؟ And the last question is from Fahid, which he asks an important demographic question where he says most USA people think that the Palestinians living in historic Palestine are only 10 to 15%, when in reality they're closer to 50%. Why is this not mentioned more? And where in past, and where, how can we make this more apparent?
Thank you, Rania. You gave me 4 big questions, loaded, very difficult in 4 minutes, but I'll try to be as brief as humanly possible. أخي محمد السمني وأنا كمان مشتاق لك وإن شاء الله بشوفك عن قريب. Canceling all agreements with Israel, why not with the US when they declared Jerusalem as its capital? No, we did stop all contacts with the United States the moment it did that. And we took the PLO, the Palestinian leadership, President Abbas was absolutely firm. And I assure you, there was so many attempts and so many, to try and challenge that decision. It hasn't since May 2018. And I can attest to this myself because I was right in the middle of this whole situation. There was an immediate canceling, but the canceling was of our commitment to the US. The canceling was of our contact with the US administration because it was the US who took that decision. كثير من الفلسطينيين يعني قلقين من موضوع العودة للضفة بعد فك الارتباط. أرجو عدم استخدام هذا المصطلح فك الارتباط. ما كانش في بيننا وبين الاحتلال ارتباط علشان نفكه على الإطلاق. هذا احتلال عسكري غير قانوني. اللي كان بيننا وبينه هو اتفاق لإنهاء هذا الاحتلال لم ينتهي، وبالتالي هو التحلل من الاتفاقيات وليس فك ارتباط. تعترف إسرائيل بجواز السفر وما شابه. نحن نعرف أن هناك تكلفة كبيرة لقرارات سياسية من هذا الحجم، ونفهم أن إسرائيل تريد أن نركز نحن على الحركة والجوازات والمعاشات والقضايا هاي، ولكن هذا مهم. وكمان مهم أهلنا اللي بده يتعالج من أمراض زي السرطان اللي بيطلع من غزة ولازم يتنسق له عشان يروح على مستشفيات القدس. إحنا عم نتألم، وحقيقة وقف العلاقات بيأثر علينا إحنا، لأنه إحنا اللي تحت الاحتلال، إحنا اللي محتاجين تنسيقات خصوصا في مسائل الصحة وما شابه. ولكن كمان مرة يجب أن لا يغيب عنا الهدف والوسيلة. وأنا بدي أكد لك إنه إسرائيل هي دولة قائمة بالاحتلال، وبالتالي هي مسؤولة عن المواطنين تحت الاحتلال. المواطن تحت الاحتلال إذا بده يعود لأرضه المحتلة غصب عنها إسرائيل. ما هو قبل أوسلو ما كنا نروح ونيجي، وأنا أذكر وإسرائيل كانت تدخلنا بالهويات وتصاريح زيارة وما شابه، وبالتالي هذا لا يعني عدم عودتنا. وإذا صار في هيك قصة، إذا إسرائيل كمان ارتكبت جريمة حرب وجريمة ضد الإنسانية جديدة. فبالتالي لا، هذا لا يعني على الإطلاق إنه إحنا مش رح نروع على وطننا، وبالعكس لازم نروع على وطننا إذا انهارت الأمور كلها حتى نكون هناك. وأنا من أول الناس اللي رح أروح، وخليهم يروحونا يرجعونا، رح نقعد على الجسر. هل فكرت السلطة الفلسطينية في مسألة الربح والخسارة؟ والله هذا يا أخي الكريم مسألة كثير كبيرة، الربح والخسارة، وصدقني موجعة. يعني أنا بقول لك يعني نفسي شخصي كمان موجوع من هذا السؤال، لأنه صدقني السلطة الوطنية على علاتها وشوية قضايا، وأنا فاهم إنه يعني كان ممكن الأداء يكون أحسن، بس السلطة الوطنية وطنية، الفانكشنز الوظائف تبعها الأساسية وطنية. أولادنا ومدرسينا في المدارس وأطبائنا في المستشفيات وشرطتنا في الشوارع وأجهزة أمننا، يعني هذه هيئة وطنية وتتبع قرار سياسي. وقف بوقف، اشتغل بيشتغل. فهو يعني ما تلومه هو، يعني هذا القرار في النهاية قرار سياسي، هي جهة منفذة. كمان أنا يعني في ربحة، في حسبة الربح والخسارة، مين بدي يعلم أولادنا؟ يعني بدنا نرجع تحت الاحتلال بشكل كامل؟ يرجع الاحتلال يعلمنا التاريخ مع احترامي الشديد ومحبتي وانحنائي للتاريخ المصري. أنا تعلمت قبل السلطة، تعلمت تاريخ مصر، الفراعنة وما شابه. يرجع الاحتلال يعلمنا رواية غير روايتنا؟ طب مش بس المسألة مش تنسيق وبس، المسألة كثير أبعد من ذلك وأكبر من ذلك. كمان إحنا إذا بنتوجه نحو الاستقلال، هل من المنطقي إن نحل مؤسساتنا الوطنية؟ لا بالعكس، إحنا بدنا نقوي مؤسساتنا الوطنية، يمكن بدنا نغير وظائفها، بدنا نغير تعريف اتجاهها، ولكن ما بنحلها. هذا من جانب. من جانب ثاني، يا أخي ما هو إحنا عملنا كل هذا واستثمرنا وخدمنا شعبنا وحاولنا، بس إسرائيل تريد أن تتحول السلطة من أداة لإنهاء الاحتلال إلى أداة لإدارته. وإسرائيل ومعها الولايات المتحدة بدها تحول السلطة إلى حبل حول رأس الشعب الفلسطيني، حبل ابتزاز. بدناش نعطيكم مصاريكم، طب خلي المصاري عندكم. ابتزاز في كل اتجاه. وبالتالي نحن أمام خيارين كلاهما مر. وأنا بعترف لك أخي الكريم إنه وي ستاك، يعني كلاهما مر. إنك تحل السلطة خيار مر 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 على أهلنا وبينفول، يعني مؤلم. وخيار إنك أنت تستمر بنفس الطريقة والواقع زي النعام اللي حط راسها تحت الأرض. وبالتالي في تقديري إنه في النهاية اللي لازم يأخذ القرار هو الهدف. واحنا لازم بوصلتنا تكون واضحه هيك. يعني ما هو الهدف؟ اذا الهدف الاستقلال، اذا اي اداه اخرى بتروح. وبالتالي انا في تقديري ان حتى لو تحملنا كمان 10 سنين زياده، بس اذا ارادت اسرائيل ان تحول السلطه الوطنيه الفلسطينيه الى اداه لتحسين معيشه الفلسطينيين تحت الاحتلال، فلتذهب السلطه ولناتي بسلطه اخرى، ولنعود الى منظمه التحرير، ولنتحول الى حركه تحرر حقيقيه، الى ان ياتي الوقت لكي تكون سلطتنا الوطنية قادرة على تنفيذ مسؤولياتها. أخيرا، موضوع 50% الشعب الفلسطيني داخل فلسطين التاريخية، وإنه بعض الجهات بتقول إنه بس 10 على 15%. لا، العالم كله عارف، العالم كله عارف. يمكن أنت قصدك بيحكوا 15% لأهلنا في 48، يعني الفلسطينيين اللي حاملين الجنسية الإسرائيلية اللي بيصوتوا الآن في الانتخابات الإسرائيلية وصاروا القوة الثالثة. ولكن العالم ما يعرف انه هناك 5.7% مليون فلسطيني داخل ارض فلسطين التاريخيه من النهر الى البحر. والعالم بيعرف انه في 6.5 مليون اسرائيلي يهودي. يعني احنا تفوقنا على الاسرائيليين ب 200,000 الان. والعالم فاهم انه في المجال الديموغرافي اللي اسرائيل بتشدنا عليه لدينا تفوق العددي والكيفي كمان، لانه احنا كمان عندنا شعب تحت كل الظروف قاعد. هم يعني بصراحه يعني حسباتهم مختلفه. وبالتالي اسرائيل مصممه على قفل المساحه في النقاش الجغرافي. هي مصممه انه تشتيت الجغرافيا. غزه شالتها عن الخارطه، القدس خنقتها وضمتها، بيت لحم اليوم محاصره بجدار، الضفه الغربيه مقطعه زي السويس تشيز، واحنا الهولز على فكره. يعني المدن الفلسطينيه صارت هي الهولز في هذا السويس تشيز. اذا اسرائيل يعني لحد الان تمكنت من تشتيت الجغرافيا الفلسطينيه. بس الديموغرافيا، اذا اسرائيل مصمم انها تعود الى لعبه الديموغرافيا، لدينا ما نقول. وأتمنى عليك ما تسحبش كثير أكثر هيك من كلامي، ولكن إذا القضية هي حقوق للشعب الفلسطيني، فهذه الحقوق لا تتحقق فقط من خلال حل الدولتين. لا 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 لا، الحقوق الفلسطينية يمكن أن تتحقق من خلال قضايا أخرى وأفكار أخرى وبرامج أخرى واستراتيجيات أخرى ونضال آخر وهذا الموضوع سابق لأوانه. ولكن إذا ما نفذت إسرائيل ذلك تكون آذنت ببداية حقبة جديدة في تاريخ الشعب الفلسطيني الطويل اللي عمره آلاف السنين، اللي قدر من خلاله يعني يطرد كل الغزاة، واللي قدر من خلاله انه يصمد على ارضه، واللي قدر من خلاله انه يصدر كل الانبياء. يعني معظم الانبياء اجوا من عندنا، ما ضلش حدا. يعني ابو الانبياء عندنا وسيدنا عيسى عليه السلام في بيت لحم، وسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم من القدس. نحن شعب له ارث وله حضاره، وحقيقه ما تمكنش منا حدا. وبالتالي اسرائيل قد تكون خسرت فرصه تاريخيه لكي نحدث عمليه تسويه قائمه على اساس انها امر واقع، ونعترف بوجودها على حدود 67، وتكون ذهبت مرة أخرى بنا إلى فلسطين من البحر إلى النهر.
يعطيك ألف عافية. We asked you a lot of questions and you did an amazing job. Thank you so much. It truly was an honor to host you on this webinar. And I thank all of our wonderful audience for sticking it out past our agreed upon time and hearing all this wonderful insightful conversation. I want to remind you all to please check out our website, www.paccusa.org, to check out for our future webinars, all of our other events, our summer programs. And if you liked anything that you saw, please support and donate what you can to www.paccusa.org/donate-now. Thank you very much. Yatik Elf Afia, Dr. Zomlot. We really appreciate your time. And I thank all of our wonderful audience members for your participation and your insightful questions. I hope everybody has a wonderful night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Shukran, Good to see you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.